Hi everyone! So in this video I'm going to talk about how to get a 5 on AP Environmental Science. So I took AP Environmental Science my junior year and I scored a 5, and I also took the makeup exam. I actually got really sick during the normal exam week and I had to push it back, so I took the makeup test. First thing to know is that starting in 2020, the AP Environmental Science exam is a lot different than it was in the past. They are changing the multiple choice to fewer questions, and then the FRQ now has you design your own experiment. So clearly no one has taken this exam before, so I guess your first tip would be to really utilize AP teachers that have been to workshops about the new exam, or to use the practice tools that College Board has published online, because that's formatted for the new exam. Second, I also talked about this point in my AP European History video, and I think that needs to be brought up again, is to know what type of learner you are. Meaning, if you learn well from videos, you should watch a lot of animations or videos on YouTube about AP Environmental Science. Maybe you learn a lot from reading. You should definitely read, I would recommend this one, this prep book, it's backwards, but it's AP Environmental Science, the Crash Course book that I also talked about in my Euro video. I love that brand. And I would also, like, maybe you learn a lot from, like, visualization and drawing. You could, like, make a lot of your own drawings or cartoons that you can just understand. You don't even have to be a good artist, but just making your own sort of, like, cartoons about, like, what's going on in a certain unit, or pictures behind different concepts. Also, like, for me, I think I learned differently in environmental science than I did in, like, history or other things. Like, for me, environmental science was just a lot of listening and just a lot of making connections outside of the classroom and, like, hands-on work. So listening, that included just, like, I really paid attention in class, just, like, hearing what my teacher had to say, listening to a lot of different, like, I guess, like, podcasts or even video lectures about environmental science. And then also, as I said, hands-on work, like through service projects, and, like, how does that relate to the class? My teacher actually made us way to do 2 environmental service projects per semester, or 1 per semester, and then you had to do a write-up about that service project and how it relates to what you're learning in class. For example, I did one, because I'm in Southern California, I did one where I helped remove the invasive crayfish species, so I had to talk about invasive species, effects invasive species have on native species. I talked about them in our local waterways, and yeah, so there's all sorts of different, like, vocab words that you can use in your own life, and really just making those connections outside of the classroom, like, oh, what is an environmental problem that your community faces, or what's something within your own household that isn't sustainable or is sustainable. Really, I think making connections outside of the classroom just constantly puts you in that environmental mindset and really gets you ready for the exam. Clearly, environmental science has brought up a lot today, and it's honestly good to take the exam at this time, because you're going to be constantly surrounded by environmental science being brought up in politics, being brought up in news, just even being brought up in conversation more. Like, if you took this exam in 2000 versus now, like, environmental issues are so much larger today and more talked about, and more people are getting educated on these issues. So I think that by surrounding yourself just in conversations that talk about the environment, or reading lots of news articles, that could help you make connections and to learn more that could possibly be brought up on the exam. Also, if you want to get a 5, you need to understand what you're weak in, and you need to drill those areas down. For me, that was really understanding the air pollution unit. I think that was a little bit harder for me. There's just so many different chemicals, and then there was, like, which chemicals add up to what, and which ones occur in that, like, atmosphere the most, or understanding, like, photochemical smog, like some of those tougher issues. Maybe for you, that's the math. The math part was a little bit tricky for me at first. Like, I remember having to practice the dimensional analysis a lot, or just memorizing formulas, like Rule of 70, that one was kind of easy. But really just understanding where you're weak in and where you need to go over, review. As I mentioned with making the connections outside of the classroom and to read news articles, I think that's a really good tip, because I'm not sure if they're still doing that actually, but on my AP exam they had FRQ, and it was a news article, and then you would read this like mock news article, and then you had to write all these different questions about it, like, oh, what could this community do to solve this issue or whatever. So if you're reading a lot of those articles, it's going to really get you in the mindset for when you actually have to write a question on it. It's going to be just like the ones you are reading, and you won't even have a problem with it. But if you're not practicing reading articles about environmental issues, or just reading about them like real life applications, then you're going to have a hard time trying to come up with an answer on the spot. While I'm not entirely sure, I might upload a mini series about topics covered in APES. Again, this is really what I want to major in. I find it really interesting and I'm passionate about it, so I might do some videos to help clarify some things up or topics that are confusing within APES. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys do great on your exam. Make sure to get a great night's sleep before it. Wake up, eat, and take a breather. It's going to be okay. It's just a lot of multiple choice questions, just bubbling the test, and writing calmly. Like, think in your head, what would my teacher say as the answer? Like, does my answer make sense? Reread your answers. All right, bye.